You're listening to Big World Network.
Subprimeval, Season 2, Episode 1, Ground Zero, Part 1. Written by Robert S. C. Cutler. Read by Ryan Jones. Warning: although there is no material subject matter within that couldn't be found in any general bookstore with no age constraint, this series is rated 18 and contains adult situations and content. Agent in training Devon Shore, freak show to the rest of the world, peered out of the window of a Black Hawk helicopter and down to the snowy terrain below. He was bundled up in a parka, but was still chilled to the bone. He had thought himself acclimated to cold weather after living in Kansas all of his life, but was nowhere near ready for the sub-zero Canadian winds that raked across his face at the last stopover. 100 miles from the Arctic Circle, Major Wallace signaled for Freak Show to get ready to disembark. He did as ordered, checking the security of his safety harness and the contents of his backpack. He then slid tinted goggles over his eyes and pulled on the strings to his hood, sealing off his face from the frigid temperatures. The whirlwind of events that had overtaken Freak Show's life flashed through his mind as he prepared himself to face the unknown dangers of the mission. He and his sister Cassie almost getting killed by one of those demons, finding Matt's dismembered body scattered everywhere about the apartment, going home just to discover the house he grew up in had been washed away by the flood along with both of his parents. And then, when he was most vulnerable, Major Wallace and that creepy Agent Riley guy showed up from nowhere to recruit him into the agency, threatening jail time for all of the narcotics they had recovered from the apartment if he didn't comply. Just a few short months before, he was content with his ho-hum existence. He went to school when he felt like it, smoked weed, a lot of weed, when he felt like it, and was satisfied just crashing on his sister's couch. Now he lived on military bases, ate army food and field rations, and hadn't smoked a cigarette in weeks. The nicotine patch on his arm itched, and he had a constant headache. "This is bullshit," Freak Show said out loud, thinking about his life of servitude. Major Wallace glared over at Freak Show. "You're not starting with that again." No, just bitching about the cold." "Good, because we're setting down in 5 and I need you alert and focused. Is that clear, Agent Shore?" "Yes, sir," Freak Show said, with little enthusiasm. Instead of a white blanket of snow dotted by the tops of trees, streams and outcropping of rocks popped out from the bleak, white background. Just on the other side of a grouping of conifers, the remnants of a cabin sat surrounded by smaller outbuildings, tree stumps, and what appeared to be a corral. "Looks torched," Wallace said. "Is that base camp?" asked Freak Show. "No, just locals caught up in the storm. Probably expired. Nothing seems to be alive down there." Freak Show shook his head. "Expired? Just say dead. You make them sound like a bad carton of milk." As the Black Hawk touched down, Freak Show and Wallace hopped out along with the co-pilot. A bitter, cold wind welcomed the strangers, forcing its way through their multiple layers of clothing. All 3 men drew and checked their sidearm, and then moved toward the cabin, the hard, frozen snow crunching beneath their feet. When they reached the corral, Wallace stopped Freak Show and told him to holster his gun. "Take this," Wallace said, handing Freak Show a handheld device. "This is an infrared scanner. I need you to station yourself at the north end of the corral and check the area for temperature fluctuations. It's already on, so you just need to point and look at the screen. Blue equals cold, orange warm, and so on." "Cool." Freak Show scanned the helicopter and then Major Wallace. "Set your phasers to stun." "It's not a toy, Agent Shore. We're looking for animal signatures and evidence of warm, moist air from surface water that's connected to that underground river." "You think there's an entrance to the river here? I was told it was probably all the way up at the Arctic Ocean," Freak Show said. Wallace shook his head. "This whole area is one big dead zone. It's like the people and animals that lived in this region never existed. Has to be the work of those things." "Ready to check out the cabin, sir," the co-pilot addressed Wallace. "Good. After that, I'm interested in seeing what's in the barn. And, Captain, I don't think you've met my trainee. Captain Nguyen, this is Agent in Training Shore. And Shore, this is Captain Nguyen, our forensics expert. You can call me Vu, the captain said, holding his gloved hand out to Freakshow. Devon or Freakshow is cool with me, Freakshow said, taking a firm grip of the captain's hand. Freakshow? How did you ever end up with a name like that? Asked Nguyen. Wallace interrupted. Long story and you really don't want to know. For official purposes, let's keep the names to Captain Nguyen and Agent Shore. What's with the kid? Nguyen asked Wallace as they started toward the cabin. One of Riley's pet projects and a pain in my ass. The old man is actively recruiting college-age kids with exceptional IQs. Shore's is off the chart. Riley thinks by getting them young, he can mold them into more efficient drones for the agency that think his way, and only his way. Isn't he already getting that with the military recruits? Asked Nguyen. Riley doesn't trust our kind, Wallace said. Thinks we're untrainable Neanderthals. His words, not mine. Instead of hard frozen snow, the area surrounding the cabin was a sheet of ice, indicating extreme temperatures from the fire that had engulfed the wooden structure. While Wallace glided with ease across the slick surface, Captain Nguyen fought to keep his footing, falling several times. You okay there, Captain? Wallace chuckled. Yeah, Captain Nguyen replied, embarrassed. We don't see too much snow and ice in the Silicon Valley. When they reached the cabin's front entrance, the odor of burnt wood was overwhelming. The door was splintered inward and hanging off one hinge. Inside the cabin was scorched and dark. The windows were boarded up, and most of the furniture had been upended, probably used as barricades. As the two men made their way inside, the plank floor creaked precariously beneath their weight, as if they might snap. In some spots, the wood had been burnt away, leaving large voids filled with ash. We need to check every inch of this place for remains, Wallace said. I've brought plenty of markers for the recovery team, sir. Don't bother, Captain. There won't be a recovery team. We're more interested in finding one of those things than its victims. Nguyen frowned as he cast his gaze around the cabin. The idea of not taking care of the dead didn't sit well with him. He kept up his search, not allowing himself to glare at Wallace. He knew better than to question orders. The government agency he had been recruited into had no patience for empathy. They didn't tolerate dissent and were quick to remove personnel if they weren't measuring up. An agent or soldier would just simply vanish, presumed dead on a mission to the others, though as if they never existed to the public since the agency itself didn't officially exist. Find anything yet, Captain? Asked Wallace. Yes, sir. Nguyen stared down upon the remains of at least 4 victims. Just wish we had more light in here. These guys are pretty crispy, and I can't really tell if they're human or other... Never mind. They're human, he said, taking the large blade of a utility knife and lifting the skulls out of the ashes. Oh, and 1 dog. Can you determine the cause of death? Nguyen shook his head. Death by barbecue is my best guess. They look to be torn up, but it's hard to say. It does appear they were under attack, though. There are 2 shotgun barrels lying in close proximity. Good find. If they were attacked by one of those things, maybe they got off a shot or 2, Wallace said. I would say several shots, Nguyen said. Look behind you, Major. I think I just found what we came here for. On the blackened front wall of the cabin, sunlight sparkled through several dozen holes made by buckshot, giving the appearance of stars in the night sky. Directly below, in a heap of its own ashes, lay the remains of a single creature. Its elongated skull and deep sockets gave it the appearance of being more alien than animal. Nguyen rushed over and placed a marker by the body. He took several photographs for cataloging first. Then, with skilled hands, he excised the fragile skull and bone fragments from the ashes, placing them in an evidence bag while Wallace illuminated the area with a flashlight. Make sure you recover everything you can. As soon as we're airborne, I'm calling in an airstrike to level this place, Wallace said. But we're on Canadian soil. Don't we need to clear it with their government first? Wallace smirked. They work for us. Freakshow's frantic voice erupted over Nguyen and Wallace's radios. The pilot also chimed in, alerting them to someone or something approaching at an alarming rate of speed. Wallace instructed Nguyen to continue recovering the remains while he went outside to check it out. Where the hell are you, Shore? I didn't give you permission to leave your post! Wallace yelled over his radio as he searched for Freakshow. In the freaking helicopter, man! I'm not standing outside with those things on the loose! How many? Wallace queried. Too many to count, and they're on their way, the pilot answered. I'm powering up, so you better get your butts in here. You copy that, Captain Nguyen? Asked Wallace. Already on my way with the bag of goodies. Captain Nguyen ran out of the cabin, completely forgetting about the sheet of ice. With flailing arms, he flew backward, landing flat on his back. The blue sky turned to gray as all of the air escaped his lungs. Wallace heard him hit the ice and turned. Get up, Captain! We have less than a minute before those things reach our position. Nguyen tried to answer, but could neither talk nor move. He lay fighting to breathe, still clutching the evidence bag. Impatient, Wallace slid over to Nguyen and ripped the bag from his hand. If you're unable to move in the next 30 seconds, Captain, you have two choices. Use your sidearm or wait for one of those things to tear you apart. There is no third option since the airstrike I'm about to call in won't reach you before they will. Wallace took off toward the helicopter without as much as offering to help the injured man up. Fearing for his life and just plain pissed off at Major Wallace, Captain Nguyen willed himself to move. Crawling on his hands and knees at first, he got to his feet and slipped along the ice, fighting his way to the hard-packed snow. Gasping for breath, he made his way as fast as possible across the frozen ground, the sound of the rotor blades spinning up, spurring him on. Blessedly, he reached the Black Hawk just in time and climbed in. Still out of breath, all he could do was glare at Wallace. As the Black Hawk lifted off the ground, something hit the side of the fuselage with enough force to make the helicopter list over and swing in the air like a pendulum. I thought you said those things were nocturnal, Agent Shore, Wallace yelled. Freakshow stared wide-eyed out the side window at dozens of the creatures converging on the helicopter. I've only seen them at night. What the shit, man? It's sunny out. Willis called in the airstrike and then addressed the pilot. Get us out of here, Jones. The Black Hawk became tail-heavy when one of the creatures grabbed hold of the horizontal stabilizer, causing it to pitch nose up. I can't fly with that thing on the tail, the pilot yelled as he set back down hard on the ground. Over the radio, the countdown to missile strike alerted the entire crew that they had about 3 minutes to live if the creatures didn't breach the cabin first.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.
You're listening to Big World Network.